Ina, I'm sorry. I might be saying that wrong. Yes. Ina, I hope I'm saying your name right. It's so good to have you on with us. We will be getting started shortly, in approximately 2 to 3 minutes. So thank you so much for your patience, like everybody else. And we will get started very shortly. Again, this is Jeremy Grandstaff with Penny Forward. And we will start at approximately 2 or 3 after the hour. It is just now the top of the hour. And so please sit tight and we'll get started shortly. And I can't find any music, so you guys are just going to have to deal with the idea that we have a little silence instead of me singing to you, which I'd love to do, but I'm just not sure I'm in the place to do that today.
Hello, this is Katrisa. I'll be on.
Hi,
Uh,
Patricia.
hey, I'm not going to be on very long because I have an obligation. So, um, probably around 11:30, I'll have to shut down. I'm just letting you know. I'm not trying to be rude,
Of
but thank you
course
for the
not,
invitation.
Patricia. Well, we should be able to at least cover the bulk of our materials. And so, one of the things that I want to ask you to do is if you have a burning question before you drop off, that if you don't ask, it's just not going to be worth your time to have given the half an hour. You
Uh-huh.
interrupt me and ask me that question. Okay?
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you.
You're so welcome. We're so glad you're here today.
Thank you. Can I just ask? Can I just ask the question on the chat thing? Can I just chat and
Yeah,
ask the
you
question
most
that way?
certainly can.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. All right. Thank you.
Hmm.
And Jeremy, I'll monitor the chat if that would be helpful to you.
That would be extremely helpful to me, Chris, because then that gives me the ability to monitor myself. No, I'm kidding. All right. Chris, I'd like to give you the 60-second warning. We're going to go ahead and dive right in here in 60 seconds and get ourselves started. All right, let's go ahead and officially get started. And I'm looking here, Chris. I'm not seeing the read AI. And so, Chris, I'm going to actually ask you to just kick it off with a couple welcoming remarks and maybe introducing myself. While you're doing that, I'm going to try to get read AI on here so that we have that as a backup. So, if you could go ahead and just do a brief introduction of yourself, Chris, and maybe kind of help to set the stage a little bit, and then introduce me, and then I'll come in from there.
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, wherever you might be. I'm Chris Peterson. I'm the founder and CEO of Penny Forward. We're a young, about 4 years old now, nonprofit organization founded and led by blind people who help each other navigate the complicated landscape of personal finance. We do that by offering self-paced online courses, weekly and monthly group workshops, and special webinars like this one, as well as one on one financial counseling, which can cover a gamut of topics, but many of them have something to do with employment, or at least have something to do with helping somebody to increase their income, whether that be through employment, entrepreneurship, or something else. We started Penny Forward because we felt that, well, there was a lot of focus on helping blind people to learn top-notch blindness skills and to find employment, that many of our peers in our community were worried about their finances, worried about the impacts of accepting a job and getting off of subsidies and government benefits. And we wanted to help with that. And we still do. We're all blind. We care deeply about people who are blind or low vision, and we are hoping that by focusing on our personal finances, we can drastically move the needle towards a future where blind and low vision people are financially secure and financially independent. And well, I would like that to be the case now. I just don't think we're there yet. We need to get there as soon as possible. I'd like to introduce Jeremy Grandstaff. He is the director of our employment programs at Penny Forward. He also has a day job as the VP of Business Development at CurbCut OS, working on improving the accessibility of digital assets so that we can all live, work, learn, and play more accessibly. And at Penny Forward, he's been the designer of our Employment Essentials course, an online course we released earlier this year, as well as our Career Climb program, a program that we have piloted in Arkansas and that we would like to bring to other states and other groups of blind and low vision students, possibly even adults, in the near future. He's
Awesome.
done a wonderful job at designing these courses, and in honor of National Disability Employment Awareness Month and Blind Equality Achievement Month, we wanted to talk about those programs today. So, Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you to do that.
Awesome, Chris. And if you could do me a favor and just start the cloud recording on this. For some reason, we're having trouble getting the automated stuff. So excellent. That's great. So welcome, everybody. It's so awesome to have you here. Carrie, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. And Teresa, so nice to have you here. Casey, Nick, Pippi, Shannon, amazing to have all of you with us. Enable, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, although I may be not. And so if I'm not, I ask for your forgiveness in advance. But it's so great to have all of you here. Chris, if you could please make me a co-host, I cannot share. So I'm going to dig into our agenda. I did actually place a link to our agenda for those of you who may want to follow along. I'm going to share this on the screen for those of you who can follow along with I'm sorry, that was really the bad way to say that. For those of you who are able, yeah, there's no way I'm going to recover that. For those of you who want to follow along on the screen, you are able to do that. Our agenda today is pretty simple. We're first going to just do a quick round of introductions. Then we're going to dig in a little bit more about the program itself, talk about your questions, and make sure that you are walking out with a better understanding of what we can do at Penny Forward with our pre-eds programming that might be helpful to you and your agencies. If you're not with an agency, this gives you the ability to go and talk to your counselor and say, holy moly, I heard about this great program. I think you guys should be talking about it. Now, let's take a step back before we do introductions. We have a three-pronged purpose today. We want each of you to be able to walk out understanding how this program can help your clients achieve their career and financial goals. We want to help them understanding how their smart career choices are going to impact their financial success. We want them to be able to empower your clients by helping them create winning strategies that blend career and financial success together. And we want to help your clients increase their marketability and their leadership. If I was to be really blunt with every single one of you and very transparent, this is the course that I wish somebody would have taught me when I was between 18 to 25 years old. In fact, I think it's great that we are focused on bringing this to blind people because as blind persons, we need every advantage that we can get in order to be able to function in a system where we are the minority. But if, again, being very transparent with you, gosh, wouldn't the world be a great place if every student, if every youth had access to this material? And that would be amazing. For right now, though, we're going to focus it on bringing it to your agencies and ways that that work for you. So I have 3 questions that I'd like to ask each of you to weigh in on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm going to put these questions into the chat for those of you who like to have those things in writing. See, now I got the better way to say that. I'm sorry, to have those things in written form. They are in the chat. These are 3 questions. We're going to ask everybody to answer them in any way that you choose. So the first one, who are you and what do you do? The second one, what's the biggest challenge you face with your clients? If you don't have clients, then just say, this is the biggest challenge I face. And the third one is, what do you want to take away from today's dialogue, or put a different way, what drew you into this conversation today? Now, I'm going to ask each of us to give probably a 30-second to 40-second answer on this. So we don't need to know the whole book, but give us the cover and a couple things out of the forward, if you would. I'm going to just run down through my list, and we're going to start. Chris, you've already given your introduction, so we're going to allow that to move past. We're going to start first with Carrie and then move to Teresa. So Carrie, can you take 30 to 40 seconds, address those questions, and help us get to know you and what you want to get out of today's call?
Sure. My name is Carrie Muth, and I work at a community college in Oregon, and I support students with different disabilities, not arranging accommodations, but other supports and helping them work with vocational rehabilitation services in Oregon. And what do I want to get out of today is just information to share. For students, my biggest challenge, I don't know.
That's okay.
Not sure what that is. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm going to go to Katrisa next. And Katrisa, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying a P on the beginning of that, so my bad. So Katrisa, you're going to be next, and Casey, you're after that. So Katrisa, check in with us. Tell us a little bit more about you and what you're hoping to get out of today's call. Katrisa, I'm going to come back to you because you're still on mute. Casey, you're next up for me. So why don't you go ahead and weigh in for us, and we'll try to come back to Katrisa.
Hi, my name is Casey. I am a transition specialist working with high school to early college students in South Carolina. I don't know, I guess my biggest challenge is communicating with my students because we're very close in age and they don't always respond to me. And the thing that drew me in was actually hearing about this in the staff meeting that we had last week. And I was like, I want to do that.
Where did you say you're from? I'm sorry.
South Carolina.
Oh, I'm so glad. Okay. All right. You're one of Nikki's crew. Sorry, I'm being funny. Nikki is who I know down in South Carolina, so that's awesome. Thank you, Casey. We are now going to go to Katrisa, and then we're
Here
going
I
to go
am.
to Pippi next. Go ahead,
Hey,
Katrisa.
Gail can hear me now, right?
We got you.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm Katrisa. I'm not employed right now. I wanted to be self-employed. I'm at home right now, being a caregiver. Anyway, I would like to know what are some ways to expand employment for the blind and visually impaired. How can we create new businesses or create new jobs for the blind and visually impaired? And that's what I like to
Awesome.
do. Yeah. And
Okay.
because the clientele, I guess maybe some people are afraid to work, or maybe you need to have a community program in their own community. Because I'm from Alabama. We have regions in each community, and each county has regions, and perhaps we could maybe I could work with my VR counselor or something to get to talk about employment in your own community, because some people don't want to relocate. People want to stay at home with their families, or some work at home jobs. How can we make more work at home jobs accessible?
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Well, thank you so much for
Welcome.
weighing in. We're so glad
Welcome.
you're here.
Mhm. Thank you.
Um, and next we are going to check in with Pippi and then Nick. Pippi.
Good morning, everyone. I am Pippi from Colorado, and I am an entrepreneur in which I operate a coffee shop in the Business Enterprise Program. I also am a receptionist slash admin assistant. Um, uh, I don't really think the client, I don't know, my biggest struggle with clients is dealing with grumpy customers, I guess. That doesn't really apply
Okay.
here. People who haven't had their coffee yet. And what I hope to get out of this is to take information back to, for instance, the Colorado Center for the Blind, and also the folk rehab in Colorado, to pass on the information and the wonderful services of Penny Forward.
That's awesome, Pippi. Well, we're so glad that you're here. And by the way, anybody who serves or makes sure that people like myself have coffee is a gem in my book. So thank you for that, because it's really important that I have my coffee on a daily basis. I'm going to go to Enable next. Then I'm going to go Nick and then Shannon. So Enable, and I think I'm saying that wrong. So feel free to correct me.
It could very close. It's Enabel.
Inabel. I'm so sorry,
Oh no,
Inabel.
no worries. You did really well. Hi, so my name is Enabel. I work with the Braille Institute here in San Diego, California. I am an independent living skills instructor. Um, One of, I guess, my biggest challenges that I do face is not having as many resources I would want to pass on to people who need them, right? I really want to take away a few more tips on to pass along to all the clients and students regarding this career pathway and how to, manage finances and everything like that.
That's really amazing. Well, I'm so glad to have you here. We're going to go to Nick, and then Shannon's going to wrap us up, and I'm going to dig into talking about this program. Nick, you're up. Shannon, you're on deck.
Okay, hi, good morning. It's Niku. My name is Niku. And that's okay.
So
No,
sorry.
that's okay. No problem. I am also from the Braille Institute with Enabel, except I work in the Anaheim, California location. And I'm also an independent living skills instructor. And the biggest challenge I have with our students is basically, as Enabel said, I just want to be able to give them the resources they need. I think that our students sometimes don't even know the resources that are out there. And I just want to be able to let them know just the different options they have and the steps needed to take to get those, options. And as was mentioned earlier, financial stability. I want practical, real world experiences for my students, and I want them to be able to feel confident in doing that.
Well, I really appreciate that, Niku. Niku, that's how I say that, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Yes. So what's fascinating is I use JAWS, and it was not pronouncing that correctly at all. So my apologies for that, but I'm so glad you're here. We're going to come back now for well, it looks like Shannon and then Scott. Have we done Shannon yet? No, we have not. The order keeps changing on me here. Shannon, I believe you're next, and then Scott's going to round us out.
I am. It sounds like you do need some coffee. My name is Shannon, and I'm from South Carolina. I work with Casey, so we both learned about the information last week at our staff meeting. I'm a transition specialist with a program called Successful Transitions. We work with pre-ed students. We are a contracted vendor with our state agency and on a limited basis with the vocational rehabilitation department. I should have said state agency for the blind and our voc rehab department. One of the biggest problems, because we do a lot of visiting and Zoom calls with our students, is just keeping them engaged when they're in school and really busy with other things. And I was interested in this just to build my information and knowledge and approach to working with the students.
Love it. And Scott, why don't you round us out with a quick intro, and then I'm going to dig into talking about this program.
Sure, looking forward to that, Jeremy. I'm Scott Marshall from Arlington, Virginia, a retired lawyer. One of the biggest challenges I've had throughout my career is access to information quickly and having the tools to do that. I think the horizon is looking better in that regard today because of AI. But what I also could have used back then, and probably this and other materials from Penny Forward would greatly help in training the new job seeker or even the college student to how to negotiate an IWRP, for example, to be sure that you got the skill set that you needed to succeed.
That's so true. And I think sometimes it's the not knowing, it's the fear of not knowing that really gets clients into trouble, right? It's just easier to be afraid. Or put a different way, we think it's easier to be afraid, right? Because ultimately we all know it's not. Now, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. For those of you who are following along in the materials that I linked into the chat, I'm on page 3, and the rest of this is going to be talking about page 3 to 9 of our handouts. Excuse me, I apologize. So as Chris was referring to, we call this career climb, right? The tagline, by the way, for those who are curious, onward and upward to satisfaction and success. And in Penny Forward's view, there's a two-pronged approach to this, that when you're really talking with, and this particular program is usually targeted to youth. I define youth as 16 to 25. But I think at least in junior or senior year is probably a good time to start this. I have done this with a sophomore before. Sometimes it felt like they just weren't ready yet, right, when we put them through that. But you're looking at ages of 16, 17 to 25. This is usually sold or talked about at the agency level. So I'm going to use South Carolina as an example just because I know it was talked about at your guys' staff meeting, right? So usually what we try to do is we try to find a cohort of 8 to 15 people across the state, excuse me, though we can always modify that approach a little bit if we need to. It works really well when you have a cohort of 8 to 15, and here's why. Because we're talking about a comprehensive career and financial development program. So I want you to picture a model that we usually start with, and we do customize this depending on the state and where they're at, or the participants and where they're at. But usually we start with a model that has 10 workshops, and throughout those 10 workshops, there's 5 one-on-one executive coaching sessions for each client. Now you might say, wow, that sounds a little intense. Well, here's what we're trying to help them achieve as students. In other words, going through the 10 workshops and going through the 5 executive coaching sessions, this is what we're aiming to help them do. Number one, we want to help them get some career clarity, some clarity around not just their career paths, but their financial aspirations. Number two, we want a student to understand very early on how their job drives financial success. Now, I'm 48 years old. To me, that makes absolute sense. But when you are 15 to 25, you don't fully grasp that concept yet. And so, what we want to help them understand is what does that interplay between finance and career look like? And how does that help define where they're going to be able to go financially and what they're going to be able to do in their life? This really is about developing strategies for both their career and their finances that are comprehensive. It's about helping them increase their own marketability and their leadership skills so that they can secure the meaningful employment that they are looking to secure. And the workshops do cover a diverse range of topics, right? So I'm kind of what I'm doing is I'm really working my way right through this particular information on pages 3 through 9, if you're following along. But really, the workshops cover a diverse range of topics, including personal strength and leadership styles. So we really do dig into what makes them the type of leader that they are. What about their personality is going to drive the way they work, things like that. We'll really dive further into what we call purpose-driven employment. In other words, a job is not just a job. How do we help make sure that that job aligns to what they really want to be doing? And more importantly, how do we help them prepare themselves for what they want to be doing? So it's about strategic, clear career planning. It is also about purpose-driven employment. We take that to a whole new level because next we dig into salary negotiation, budgeting, career planning. How do those things work with each other? We have effective budget management. So once they do understand what their financial picture looks like, how do they budget and use their money effectively? We talk about building a professional online presence. And this is not just LinkedIn or, I'm sorry, not just LinkedIn, but it's also looking at resumes and even cover letters or curriculum vitaes, depending on where they want to go and what they want to land on, right? We talk about networking and interview skills. And to me, this is a critical part of the workshops that we do because we are literally teaching people how to walk into interviews with the confidence that they need to help a potential employer see that even as a blind person, they have the ability to do the job that they're applying for. But we take it a step further. It's not just about interviewing for a job. It's about making connections with people. It's about networking with people and doing it in a way that doesn't make the student seem to others that they're only in it for their own personal gain, right? How many times have each of us walked into a networking conversation with someone and we walked away saying, my God, that person just wants to have me do things for them. And networking is not like that. It's a two-way give and get. I always talk about the give and get principle, right? The way we actually structure this, as I said, we have 10 workshops. Now, we have morphed that into 7 or 5, depending on where an agency was and what they really needed us to do in order to meet their needs. But we always start with the model that's 10-5. Actually, it's the 10-5-1 model, if I'm being really specific. It's 10 workshops Those are collaborative workshops where people come together, they learn something, they then do an activity with each other, and then they come back for more processing of that activity. We have the 5 one-on-one coaching sessions, 4 of which go toward their employment and personality and leadership development and working on those things. 1 of which goes solely to helping them better understand how to apply what they're learning in the financial realm of this particular program. And then remember I said it's 10-5-1. Well, it's because each student also gets a workbook that they can use as a supplement to everything that they're learning. And what we actually do in this program is we give them the workbook at the beginning. And yes, we want them to fill it out. It's got great examples of resumes and other examples of a budget and things like that that they can use. But at the end of the course, after we've done the celebrate and look what you've accomplished, we also give them a copy of that workbook, a blank copy. And the reason that we do that is because what we're really teaching here is not just a transactional thing. It's not just a one-off, oh, let's get you your first job, or let's get you a better job, or let's even get you thinking about your job. But it's teaching them a process that if they really wanted to, every 2, 3, 4 years, they could do a self-examination of where they're at, whether their goals have changed, and what new steps they're going to need to do in order to be able to align themselves to achieve those goals. So this isn't a transactional thing where it's, oh, go through, great, now we've checked you off and your box has been checked. It's teaching them that reiterative process that they can continue to use as youth and even as adults to be able to fully tap into their own expertise, their own leadership abilities, their own personalities, their own materials, to be able to demonstrate their own capabilities and to be able to secure themselves the employment that they need and the financial future that they're wanting.
And if I may add, Jeremy, this is the start of what we hope is a lifelong relationship with us as a community where students can refer back to Penny Forward for financial questions they may have, employment questions that they may have, not only to our instructors who are accredited in various areas, but also to their fellow community members. So if, for example, a student came to us and said, gee, I'd really like to work in a coffee shop. Well, wouldn't it be great if they could talk to Pippi anytime that they want to find out what it takes to run a coffee shop? And maybe they'll start out as a barista, and maybe they'll decide then to move up into management, or even into something like the business enterprise program, or maybe they'll open their own coffee shop. But we want to be there to provide them the support and the encouragement along the way, every step of the way, as they do that.
And Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, right? In fact, remember I talked about we teach them how to do networking. Well, one of the ways that we do that is each student. So here are some things that they produce as part of this. 1, they find out what their leadership style is now. 2, they find out where they want that to go. Number 3, they walk out of the program with a resume that has been reviewed by more than just myself. They walk out with an updated or a new LinkedIn profile if they haven't done that. For those of you who are wondering why we do LinkedIn, it's because that's going to be like anytime that they're reaching out to somebody, that's going to be where recruiters go to. It's going to be where most people go to verify the professional background of someone. And so we want to get them in that habit. But to your point, Chris, not only are they doing a mock interview, but they have the ability to reach out to ask for a networking conversation with someone in the field that they want to go to. And so, to Chris's point, if they say, I really want to learn more about this program that would let me have my own coffee shop and let me be in business for myself, well, then Pippi, you may be a person that we ask them to do an interview with, right? And again, they're informational interviews, right? So realistically, I believe that anyone who's thinking about their career should be trained how to do informational interviews. The last thing that I want to end us on, and before I open this up for questions, because everybody says, well, what's the impact? Right? Why would we do this? This is, we already have lots of programming happening. Why would we want to throw this in? Well, I feel it's for three reasons. One, the triad approach that we have, or the triad approach, I think will work with that, of the 10 workshops, which are collaborative, that gives them a chance to feed off of each other, the 5 one-on-one executive coaching sessions, and the workbook. That is a triad that significantly removes barriers to their success. Some people learn by doing, some people learn by reading, some people learn by listening. And we accomplish all three of those things with the workshops, the one-on-one coaching sessions, and the workbook. But here's the other reason. I couldn't think of a better example of this. I'll give you two. One, I was doing this with World Services for the Blind last year, and they had 9 students that went through the program. One of those students, he said, I want to be a chef. I don't even know why I'm in this program. This is ridiculous. I don't want to learn how to do a resume. I don't want to learn any of this stuff. I swear to you, that was his first conversation with me. By the end of the program, this guy's on Instagram doing videos of him being a chef so that he can use those videos as a way to offset the objections that he was getting when he would try to go in and apply for a job. And someone would think that as a blind person, he couldn't be a chef, right? That's the power of social media these days. And so we taught him how to effectively use that. The other piece that I love to talk about, and I don't know, you could talk. I don't know, Chris, that you were actually on this particular one, but I'm doing the final workshop. Again, this is with a bunch of youth from Arkansas, and we're doing the final workshop. One of the things that I always do in the final workshop is I'll say, "So, what did we cover over the last 8 workshops?" And usually when I do that, I have a bulleted list that I'm going to go through. We did this, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, right? Before I could even start going through my list, these students who I swear to you had come in 8 workshops before that at the beginning of the program and could barely talk to me or would barely say a word, these students interrupted me when I was saying, so what did we learn? And they started, well, first we did a resume, and then we were talking about personality, and then someone else would interrupt and say, yeah, but don't forget, we started with leadership style. They hit on every bullet point that I was about to cover. And they did it with poise, and they did it with confidence, and they did it with excitement. And you want to talk about why you do programs like this with your clients, or why, if you're not a client, or if you are a client, you want to take this back to your agency. It's because the confidence that comes from going through a conversation, a conversational based dialogue, what they're going to go through in their workshops, the confidence that comes out of having a systematic way to think about your career and your finances, even when you're 17 years old, is going to set them up with a confidence success rate that they are going to need as they are moving forward with what they want to do in society.
And if that's
So,
not enough,
yes, if that's not enough,
then let's talk a little bit about our experience. Jeremy and I have both been working in professional capacities and leadership capacities for most of our careers. Jeremy as a manager and a management consultant and a business owner, myself as a software developer and a team leader of software developers. I have over 10 years of experience with interviewing candidates, reviewing resumes. Jeremy has more, and we have a deep bench of people behind us that we can connect people to for informational interviews outside of the blindness field. So, would you rather have somebody teach this that maybe has only ever worked as a rehab counselor or only ever worked as a transition specialist? Or would you rather have someone teaching this material that has worked in some of these jobs that we're asking students to think about building their lives around?
That's a great point. So I feel like we're getting into the realm, Chris, where we're becoming a little bit more salesy than we like to be. And so I just am going to own that and take that objection off the table right away. But I want to open it for the 20 minutes that we have left to just ask, what questions are you having? What more would you like to know more about? Anybody?
And feel free to go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Remind us of your name if you would. And I hear someone right now.
Hi, it's Shannon.
Hey, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Hey.
Go ahead.
How do you handle when the cohort of students, maybe they're not all at the same level of education as far as understanding financial principles? How do you deal with
That is a great question. That is an absolutely great question. And I can actually give you a real life example of this. When I was doing this with a client last year, and I'm being really cautious not to mention the name, right? Because I don't want to breach confidence. But when I was doing this with a particular agency last year, one of the things that we had happen is I had some of the kids, let's say there's 10 total. I think three of them were in college, three of them were in senior year, and the other three were junior year. And there's this interesting piece, Shannon, where I went in thinking to myself, oh, this is going to be really tough to manage, right? Because they're all at such different places. And so there's a couple things that we do to manage that. First of all, there are some activities where when I divide them into small groups, I'll divide them based on where they are. So I may put all the college kids with each other, all the juniors with each other, all the seniors with each other, right? But there were other activities that we were doing where I would actually mix them up intentionally. Because what I found is that the older ones tended to engage more in the conversation if they felt like they were leading a little. And so I can always tap into those pieces. So that's one way that we do it. I think the other thing that we do is the the curriculum is made to meet where they are, right? So for example, when we talk about resumes, I have an example of a resume that we give them for someone who's still in high school. I have an example of a resume that we give them for someone who's in college, right? And so we're always thinking very holistically about how we do that. um, and actually I would say what I tended to see in one of the programs that I did last year is the younger ones ended up walking out with more maturity than what I thought they would end up with, simply because they were part of a cohort that had older people in it, right? So I hope that answers your question, Shannon. Did I answer that, or should I take another stab?
Yeah, that helped.
Awesome. Other questions? Remember, take yourself off mute or post it in the chat, and we'll go from there. Anyone else have other questions?
This is Carrie. How is this usually funded or paid for participants?
Yep, that's a great question as well. So this is PREET eligible. So what we do is like I said, that's why we always are working with an agency, because agencies can tap into PREET's dollars. And what we've also found is that there are some agencies who aren't using all of their PREET's dollars. And so that's kind of the purpose of working with an agency, is you guys are able to pull the funding to be able to support students in this straight from PREET's programming dollars. When we're working at the agency level, it is $3,000 per participant. That covers the workbook. It covers the 10 workshops. It also covers the 5 executive coaching sessions. So we do it more for a all-inclusive, if you will, type of model. Did that answer that question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Awesome. Good questions. Other questions? Don't be shy. My job is to answer your questions, but I can't answer them if you don't ask them.
Jeremy, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's Shannon again. I have another question about.
You ask as many as you want.
Don't tell me that. About the workbook, is that something y'all wrote, or is it something you adapted from another curriculum?
So that's a great question as well. So I'm going to tell you the backstory of how we got here, Shannon. So like Chris said, I own my own business for 20 years. At various points in my career, I've worked as a recruiter. I have also, been responsible for hiring and firing employees. Honestly, I've been responsible for managing employees. I have also spent 3 years of my career looking for a new job, which I almost, I used to say 2, 3 years ago, I was ashamed of that. But now looking back on that, sometimes that's what it takes, right? The workbook was actually developed as part of doing this work. When I was doing it for World Services for the Blind, we had a cohort that I was having trouble getting engaged in the workshops, Shannon. And so I actually developed the workbook as a way to get their attention and to show them overall where we were going. I also felt, kind of going back into my old days of collaborative learning, you can't expect everybody to get something just by listening and talking it through. Sometimes they need it in writing. Now, the model that we're using was actually also developed by me in consultation with an expert that does LinkedIn profiles, 2 or 3 different career coaches, about 5 different recruiters. So what I basically did, I called them the design team. And I put them together and I started looking at what are the things that I used to do when I was executive coaching clients on getting a better job. And we built the course for Penny Forward around that. Chris had talked about the Employment Essentials course. So that was the original draft of the workbook, if you will. And then when I was having trouble getting some students to engage, I took that course to the whole level of let's just make it a workbook and make it kind of that trifold approach, right? We have the workshops, the executive coaching sessions, and a workbook that they can see. Your specific question though is it based off of models, right? Or a particular model?
Right.
What I would say is it's based off of a conglomeration of about 6 different models. So when it comes to leadership, we're looking at Strengths Finder. When it comes to personalities, it can be everything from the Myers-Briggs all the way up to Strengths Finders as well, because they do a little personality stuff. When it comes to the LinkedIn profile, oh my gosh, I think there were like 6 people on that particular team. If you will, Shannon, I took a lot of different courses on how to do LinkedIn right and then married all the best stuff together. Right. So it's not based off of one model. I like to say it's taking a lot of different models and taking the best from each.
Okay.
Does that answer that question? Okay, good.
Does, yeah. Yeah. We've had to do that with some of our curriculum, kind of tweak it to meet the needs of our students. So I certainly understand that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. The first time that I went through a process like this, I literally was handed a PDF workbook and was told to fill it out. And as a blind person, it was the most unaccessible PDF that I've ever had. And one of the things that I found fascinating about that is I was paying the person to help me, and that's what they gave me. Right. And so, kind of coming back to what Chris was talking about with Penny Forward in general, and one reason that I love working with Penny Forward is that as blind persons, there are times when that barrier to access can actually be the barrier that's going to keep us held down. And so that's why I love doing the work that we're doing in this particular case, because I really think it takes the mission of Penny Forward to the next level. Penny Forward is very focused on financial access, but it's if you don't have the right job or a job that's going to pay you well, then you're not going to be able to achieve the financial access that you want anyway. So to me, it's almost part of that equation. These are some really good questions. I want to recognize we have about 9 minutes left, and I would love to ask you each to check out before you leave today. But does anybody have any burning questions? Questions that if you don't ask, this is just not going to be worth your time to have attended today.
Pippi, I have a couple of questions.
What you got, Pippi?
So what format do you do the workbook in? Or formats?
Word.
Okay. And then my other question, have you all considered hitting up high schools in general for this? I have a 16-year-old who won't listen to me about finding a job. I'm mom, and so therefore I'm stupid and know nothing.
Mm.
And I'm sitting over here thinking, please, can she do this?
Well, the first thing that I'd probably do in that situation, and remember, this program has the ability to tap into the pre-ETS funding, which is harder to do unless you're working through an agency. So my first very high level advice on the quick situation you just gave me is I would say get them an open case and then they can come in through their agency. That's how I do that. The other piece that I find, and I have had to do this with a couple of high schoolers, is I'll hook them up with someone who's almost about ready to graduate college, and they tend to have a different conversation than what I can have sometimes, being, me being 48 and they're 16, right? But that there may be a longer conversation for us to have, and I'm always happy to do that as well. But that would be my initial reaction. Good questions. Any other burning questions before we check out for today, folks? Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to work right down my list. I'm going to ask you to just tell us either one thing that excites you about this dialogue we've had, or one thing that you're taking away from today's conversation. Casey, you're going to be first, and then we'll go to Naku. Before I do that, though, I want to give you a couple pieces just in case I have some of you who drop off before we finish the checkout. One, if you have questions about this program, I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I am at jeremy.grandstaff@pennyforward.com. That's JEREMY period grandstaff, GRANDSTAFF at pennyforward.com. You can also reach me on my office line at 202-810-5368. Again, that's 202-810-5368. We are definitely in the process of really trying to solidify our agency contracts for the next year. And so I do want to encourage you to have those conversations sooner than later so that we can explore what options might work best for you. And Chris just put both of those contact pieces in the chat. So we'll definitely do that. Casey, let's go to you first, then to Naku. Casey, what's one thing you're taking out of today's dialogue?
So one thing that excites me the most is updating my own profiles on all of the businessy sites. I forgot I had a LinkedIn profile until you said something about it. And I also had a student call me during this meeting and tell me he just got a job. So that's exciting.
That's amazing, Casey. And you know what? Again, we may have to take this offline, but I'm not sure exactly who you're affiliated with. But if this is a program that might be helpful to you guys, let's have that conversation. And so definitely feel free to reach up and we can talk about that. But excellent news to hear there. And I will tell you, and I actually tell this to CEOs of companies. People buy from people, they don't buy from companies. Right? And so your LinkedIn, even though I'm Jeremy Grandstaff and I'm VP of Business Development and Partnerships for CurbCut OS, or I'm Director of Priyat's Transitional Programs for Penny Forward, people go to my LinkedIn when they want to look up who I am. Right. And so I think you hit the nail on the head with that, Casey, that really figuring out how you can tap into that may be even helpful to you. Let's go Naku, then Pippi. Naku, what are you taking away from today's conversation? Very quickly.
I'm taking away that taking to my students the success stories I've heard and the practical advice you gave, particularly, I want them all getting a LinkedIn profile and the networking, network, and more network. So thank you for that.
I think that's great. And remember, we can always make that a little more systematic by getting them into the program. So let's definitely keep talking about that. We're going to go to Pippi, then Scott. Pippi, go ahead.
I like Casey updating my own LinkedIn profile because I haven't touched it in I don't know how many years. And also taking this information back to CCB to work into their summer transition program for high school students.
That's amazing. Excellent. We're going to go to Scott next, and then we're going to go to Annabelle, and then Shannon will wrap us up. So Scott, one thing you're taking away from today's conversation? Okay, we're going to come back to Scott. You're still muted. Annabelle, why don't you go? I've got you now, Scott. Go ahead.
Okay. The power of experiential learning is really, really amazing. And I think that's what your services are all about. And that engages people. And to be honest with you, I need to take the course, or at least part of it, to find out how to do my LinkedIn profile. Because I don't have one.
Definitely take that course, right?
Absolutely.
On Penny Forwards. It's called Employment Essentials. We definitely recommend doing that. And I know, Scott, you're very connected into some of the agencies, so feel free to let them know about this, and we can definitely talk with them about that. And excuse me, Enabel, let's go to you next. One thing you're taking away from today's dialogue, and then Shannon, you'll wrap us up.
Yeah, definitely the power of social media nowadays and how it opens up the world for, everybody to put themselves out there a little bit more for networking. So we'll be taking that and seeing what we can do with that. And I'd love to connect with Penny Forward to have you guys do a presentation like this, but
Okay.
specifically for our organization, let them know what you guys do so everybody else, not just us, can pass on this wonderful information.
Well, drop me an email. You and I will schedule time and have that conversation, okay?
You got it. Thank you.
And we'll make that work. Shannon, you get the final word before I do the final. So,
Okay.
what you got?
I'm excited at the prospect of giving students financial information at a prime time in their life where they can use the benefit of compound interest to build wealth long term. Not that you said that specifically, but just teaching them about how to manage their finances, because I think that is something that's so under taught in the blindness community, because people just assume you'll be on SSI or SSDI. Why do you need to learn anything about finances? So I think that's such an exciting part for me.
I think, here's how I want to follow up on that in the 30 seconds that I have left. I think you are so right about that. And I think, one of the things that I remember getting back from one of the students that I had in this program last year is they called me after the first workshop. Now, mind you, they liked using Google Meeting, Shannon, right? And Google Meeting is not as easy for us as blind people to host on. And I hosted the whole meeting all by myself. And this kid calls me and he's like, I didn't even think that I could come off of SSDI, and you're sitting here hosting meetings. And so I think there is a power that comes from people seeing someone like myself or someone like Chris, where we are successful, we happen to be blind, and we're demonstrating that impact that sometimes is really hard to see when you're so far in the trench, right? So again, really appreciate all of you joining. I know we've went a couple minutes over, and so just a reminder, pennyforward.com is the website. You can contact me directly to talk about next steps with you or your agency at jeremy.grandstaff, jeremy.grandstaff, grandstaff, at pennyforward.com. Or you can call me directly on my office line at 202-810-5368. I love doing this work with you, Chris, and I'm so glad that we were able to put this together. Do you have any other final words, Chris, before we wrap for the day?
I just pasted a free resource that I would like you to share with your clients in the chat. It's the Penny Forward podcast. It's a show all about blind people building bright futures one penny at a time. And if your students are wondering just what a blind person can do, that's a good place for them to find out.
That's
and
right.
With that, we do need to wrap up. So thank you, Jeremy. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And we hope to hear from you again real soon.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get some of those agencies the service you need. Thank you, everybody.